Today, you'll learn English with the news. We'll read a news article together on the Hantavirus cruise ship outbreak. Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Our headline: what we know about hantavirus cases tied to deadly cruise ship outbreak. So this is a ship. What type of ship? It's a cruise ship. It's a ship you use to go on cruises. So cruise, that's what you can use as the verb. You go on cruises, or you could say, this year we're going on a cruise to Alaska, for example. And an outbreak suggests that there's a sudden and potentially widespread of something dangerous. And in this case, that something dangerous is a virus called hantavirus. Let's read this again. What we know about. Notice this isn't a question form. The question form would be, what do we know about? What do we know about hantavirus? What do you know about going on a cruise? So that would be the question. But here it's a statement. What we know about hantavirus cases tied to. So tied to, this is the same as connected to or linked to, which means you have people on a cruise getting sick. You have hantavirus. They're not two separate things. In some way, they're related. They're connected. So that's tied to. So because this is written in statement form, we know that the article will give us that information. It will tell us what they know about hantavirus. Don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's keep reading. Health officials around the world are monitoring a deadly hantavirus outbreak linked to. So remember, we have tied to, but I said you could also use connected to, linked to. It means the same thing. It means there's a relationship between A, B, whatever A and B are. In this case, it's the virus and the people on the ship getting sick. Linked to a Dutch flagged cruise ship. So a Dutch flagged cruise ship means that the cruise ship operates under the laws and regulations of the country of origin, so the Netherlands. So you would say a Canadian flagged cruise ship, an American flagged cruise ship, wherever that ship is legally owned and operates under those laws. Let's keep reading. So far, there are 9 confirmed or suspected cases connected to the ship, including 3 deaths. 3 deaths means, unfortunately, 3 people have died. So 3 deaths. This is the noun, and then 3 people have died. Well, that's the verb to die. And by including so far, it implies that it's possible for this to keep happening. And that's why I also use the present perfect, have died, to show that there's a connection to a present and also is potentially an ongoing time reference. Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson. Hantaviruses. So notice this is in the plural form. Before we just spoke about it as a singular concept, hantavirus. So it exists in the plural form. This has to be pronounced as an extra syllable. Hantaviruses. Viruses. So you have it in the plural here. Repeat after me. Viruses. Hantaviruses are a family of rare viruses. So using a family, just like people who belong together, it's a term that you can use for related, a group that's related. So it's the same thing. If it's a family of rare viruses, it means that those viruses are connected to each other in some way. Hantaviruses are a family of rare viruses, usually passed to humans through contact with contaminated rodent waste. So rodent, think of rats, mice, rodent waste, or saliva. So saliva, the liquid on your tongue and in your mouth, that's saliva. So if it's contaminated, it means that rodent waste has the virus in it, or the saliva has the virus in it. They often present with symptoms of. Okay, they present with symptoms of means that, first of all, they is the viruses in this family, so hantaviruses, they have symptoms of. Present meaning, well, when you present yourself, you appear for the first time in a way, so you can think of it like that. So they have these symptoms, and it's when you notice them at first. So the first symptoms, they often present with symptoms of pulmonary. Pulmonary, this is related to your lungs. And respiratory, that's your breathing. So yes, you use your lungs to breathe, but you also use other parts as well. So respiratory, breathing in general, pulmonary, more specific to your lungs. With symptoms of pulmonary and respiratory distress. So distress means that there's some issue. So you're not breathing properly, your lungs aren't working the way they should. That would represent distress. There's something wrong. That can be severe. So when you're talking about symptoms, there's mild is the lowest, there's moderate, which is the middle, and then there's severe, which sounds like the highest. So if you're talking about a fever for yourself, you might say, oh, I just have a mild fever. I can still work today. I have a moderate fever. I should probably work less today and drink lots of water, take breaks. I have a severe fever. I can't work today. So that sounds negative, to be honest. However, that can be. Because they use the modal verb can, it means it's a possibility. So it doesn't mean it's guaranteed. So there's some hope. So if it were guaranteed, you would state it as a fact. That is severe. But can be severe means there's a possibility it's severe, but there's also the possibility it's mild or there are no symptoms or issues at all. Let's keep reading. According to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the strain identified in the outbreak on the MV Hantavirus cruise ship, so I guess this is the name of the cruise ship, is called the Andes virus. So the strain means the specific type of virus. So the strain of this hantavirus is called Andes virus. So the virus is a general category, and then the hantavirus is a specific type of virus, and then the Andes virus is a specific type of hantavirus. So we're just getting larger and then more specific with the categorization, which is the only known hantavirus strain to spread person to person. Okay, so this means obviously if I have it, and then if we come in close contact, perhaps, then I could then transfer the virus, give the virus, spread the virus to you. Transmission occurs. So transmission, this is a formal medical way of just talking about spreading. How I use the word transfer, that sounds everyday. Transferring the virus, spreading the virus. In a very everyday, you would say give. So if Kevin, my husband, is coughing, and then the next day I start coughing, I would say, you gave me your cold. You gave me your cold. Or I would say, you got me sick. You got me sick. Those are everyday ways of saying. I would not say, Kevin, you transmitted your cold to me. That sounds very official, medical. Transmission occurs through prolonged close contact. So close contact would be, well, my husband and I, we obviously are very close with one another. You can imagine that saliva would spread between us, whereas that would not happen with my students or even friends potentially. And then prolonged means for a long period of time. So not just you see someone in a mall and you're talking to them for 5 minutes. Obviously, Kevin and I live together, so it's prolonged close contact, health officials say. Let's keep reading. Investigations, contact tracing efforts, and isolation protocols were underway in a number of countries to which citizens returned after leaving the cruise on a stop at the end of April. Okay. So investigations, that's clear, to investigate. Contact tracing. If you trace, it means you understand where that came from. So they're trying to understand how people were in contact with the virus, but also in contact with each other, since the virus can spread from one person to another. So if I'm on this cruise ship and I shared a room or a meal with another person on the cruise ship, they would have to trace both of us. So contact tracing efforts and isolation protocols. We all know about isolation because of COVID. And isolation protocols were underway. If something is underway, it means they're taking place. So you can say, we use this in a more formal way, to talk about the official start of things. So you might say the new construction project is underway or will be underway next week. So will start next week. I wouldn't probably say dinner is underway. It sounds too formal just to say, I've already started dinner. I would just say, oh, I started dinner. It will be ready in 20 minutes. Or I'm going to start dinner in 20 minutes. So this is a more formal way of talking about the official start of something. We're underway in a number of countries to which citizens returned. Okay, this means that the citizens returned to these countries. This is why to is there, because you return to a country. You can return to a location. Oh, let's return to our favorite restaurant before we leave. So that's where this to comes from, to which citizens returned after leaving the cruise on a stop at the end of April. So people left the cruise, they went back to their country, they returned to their country, and now these protocols are taking place. They're underway. Now, this sentence continues, as well as for people on a flight with one of the confirmed cases. So these three things are underway, are happening for the people who are on the cruise, but also, so the as well as for, this is also for people on a flight with one of the confirmed cases. So if I'm on the cruise, I leave the cruise, I get on a flight, you were never on the cruise, but you are on the flight, and I'm on the flight, then there's the potential for contamination, for the virus to spread. So you would have to be involved with these three things because you were on the flight with me. That's why they added this as an additional point, because they want you to know this is happening, but this is the main thing happening. That's why they're using as well as, because it's for a secondary point. The World Health Organization said, let's keep reading. No one currently on the ship, so here the ship being the cruise ship, has symptoms of the virus, the ship operator Oceanwide Expeditions said Thursday. So this is the name of the operator. Marie Van Kerkhove, the agency's director of epidemic and pandemic preparedness and prevention, told reporters at a news conference Thursday that the ongoing nature of those public health measures and the Hantavirus's potentially lengthy incubation period meant more cases could still emerge. Okay, more cases, so more cases of hantavirus, like the ones that were already reported, could still emerge. Emerge means happen. The formal way of saying happen could still emerge. And it's because of the lengthy incubation period. So an incubation is how long it takes the virus to develop to the point where it produces symptoms in your body. And lengthy obviously is an adverb that comes from length of time. So lengthy saying it's a long incubation period. So it may take weeks or months, I'm not sure, for people to develop symptoms. The WHO, so this is of course World Health Organization, and when you say it, you generally say it as the word WHO. And it's the because it's the organization. It's a specific organization and the article is required. The WHO is in touch with officials. So if the WHO is in touch, to be in touch means it's talking to the officials, having conversations. So to be in touch. So this is a very common everyday expression you might say to a friend. We'll be in touch soon. Let's keep in touch. Let's stay in touch. Those are common expressions using in touch. So you're having conversations. Now, important to pay attention to that sentence structure because you have to be in touch with someone, and you can have conversations with someone, but you talk to someone. Now, in my examples, there is no preposition because the object isn't identified. The object being who you're talking to. So in this case, officials. I'll be in touch with you soon, with him, with her, with the organization soon. Let's keep in touch with each other, but that would be rarely said. It would be more common to say, I'll be in touch with him soon. It's more common to include the with if it's not with you. If it's to you, I would just say, I'll be in touch soon. I wouldn't say I'll be in touch with you because it's obvious. I'm talking to you. But if it's about someone else, you may be more likely to include that. So if you have the object, then you include the preposition with, but you talk to someone. So the WHO is in touch with officials in at least 12 countries who are monitoring citizens that returned home after disembarking in St. Helena, Tedros. So notice, I said you return to a country, which is true. You return to your favorite restaurant, which is true. So if you're wondering, well, Jennifer, why is it just return home? Home is an exception. You go home, you return home. You go to the store, you go to a country, you return to the store, to a country. So home is just an exception. You go, return home. Do not add to. Let's look at this verb, to disembark. That would be the infinitive. We have our preposition after, so you know you need the ing. After disembarking in St. Helena, Tedros. Disembarking is the formal way of saying leaving or getting off a form of transportation. So if you disembark, it means you leave, get off. Now, get off we use for specific types of transportation, not necessarily all. Disembarking is general. You would use it for all forms of transportation, but it's formal. Again, if I'm talking to my husband, I wouldn't say, oh, do we disembark at this stop? Never would I say that. But there may be an announcement saying there's an emergency and everyone must disembark now. So an official announcement might say that, but I would say to Kevin, are we getting off at this stop? If it's a subway, train, or bus, are we getting off at this stop? Let's keep going. Those countries, so remember they said 12 countries. So now there's going to be a long list of 12 countries. Those countries include, you could also say are, because if you use include, it sounds like maybe there are other countries. But if you're going to list all 12, I would personally say those countries are. Those countries include Canada, Denmark. Notice what I'm doing before I read all 12. This comma is verbalized as a pause. So when you're reading a list, don't say Canada, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand. That sounds very rushed. Say Canada, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, St. Kitts and Nevis. Notice here, I did not put a pause because this and isn't to state another country. This is the name of one country, St. Kitts and Nevis. St. Kitts and Nevis. Now pause. So I'll start from here. New Zealand, St. Kitts and Nevis, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. You may also put an additional pause after and the United States. Notice there are some exceptions here. We have the United Kingdom, the United States, and there was one more. Do you see it? The Netherlands. This is an exception because, as you know, proper nouns, Canada, Denmark, Germany, they don't take an article. But countries that are made up of individual places and together as a whole, like for example, you have different lands, you have different kingdoms, different states, we add the in front of those. So here you have three very common ones. And that's the end of the article. So what I'll do now is I'll read the article from start to finish and you can focus on my pronunciation. What we know about hantavirus cases tied to deadly cruise ship outbreak. Health officials around the world are monitoring a deadly hantavirus outbreak linked to a Dutch-flagged cruise ship. So far, there are 9 confirmed or suspected cases connected to the ship, including 3 deaths. Hantaviruses are a family of rare viruses usually passed to humans through contact with contaminated rodent waste or saliva. They often present with symptoms of pulmonary and respiratory distress that can be severe, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The strain identified in the outbreak on the MV Hondius cruise ship is called the Andes virus, which is the only known hantavirus strain to spread person to person. Transmission occurs through prolonged close contact, health officials say. Investigations, contact tracing efforts, and isolation protocols were underway in a number of countries to which citizens returned after leaving the cruise on a stop at the end of April, as well as for people on a flight with one of the confirmed cases, the World Health Organization said. No one currently on the ship has symptoms of the virus, the ship operator Oceanwide Expeditions said Thursday. Maria Van Kerkhove, the agency's director of epidemic and pandemic preparedness and prevention, told reporters at a news conference Thursday that the ongoing nature of those public health measures and the hantavirus's potentially lengthy incubation period meant more cases could still emerge. The WHO is in touch with officials in at least 12 countries who are monitoring citizens that returned home after disembarking in St. Helena, Tedros. Those countries include Canada, Denmark, Germany, the Netherlands, New Zealand, St. Kitts and Nevis, Singapore, Sweden, Switzerland, Turkey, the United Kingdom, and the United States. Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.